the phrase, the long march into the social institutions, is, I believe it comes first from the writings of a fellow by the name of Antonio Gramsci. And I think he probably wrote that about, I'm going to guess, around 1920. And then it was picked up by others, and books have been written on it. But Gramsci himself was an Italian communist. And he was talking about refining the art of revolution, communist revolution. He basically was saying that the old school among communist revolutionaries was, overthrow by force and violence. And he said there's another way, and particularly the way that you would use in a system where people are not used to force and violence. I mean, a lot of third world countries and backward countries, maybe that's their way of life. Their leaders always come to power through force and violence, through coups d'etats and so forth. But in countries like the United States and Great Britain and France and so forth, the so-called civilized countries, they have parliaments. And so the idea that Gramsci was writing about was, how do you come to power, we communists, how do you come to power using nonviolent methods? And actually, Lenin had written about that in a different way. He just talked about two kinds of revolution. One was parliamentarian, and the other was force and violence. But Gramsci refined that parliamentary side of it a little bit by saying, we're not only just going to do it through the legislatures, through laws, and making it appear that we're solving problems, moving inch by inch toward communism by solving problems that we created, and so forth. But they were going to deliberately infiltrate into the institutions in a culture and change the way people think so they would be more receptive to these moves. Gramsci said you can't just have legislation, you've got to have people wanting or thinking they want that legislation. And so you've got to change the way they think. And so what are the institutions that he was talking about? He was talking about the schools primarily and the media. And that was it. The sources of information, and the churches also, by the way, to soften the moral edges of where the churches believe you should or should not go. The mere definition of sin. All of that had to be softened and moved a little bit inch by inch. And these were the institutions that he said, we can come to power, comrades, if we can come to power without firing a shot, if we can change the culture by changing the thinking of the people toward to accepting our principles, and we do this through the institutions. It was a very brilliant move, and that exactly is what has been happening ever since he spoke about it, and you find it everywhere you look. The kids are coming out of school, and they believe everything that's written in the Communist Manifesto. They think that's just, everybody knows that that's the right thing, and they don't believe that capitalism is any good. They think that's horrible. They think that welfare is the ultimate form of charity and so forth. They think it works. They think it works, actually. They believe that you can do anything you want to that's destructive of society and productivity. As long as it's destructive, it's okay. But if it's constructive, well, then somehow it's wrong. And that's all done through the long, slow march through the institutions. It's a very brilliant strategy for conquest.